This anime from 2003 is one I didn't have high expectations of, but it did surprise me. So let's dive into Tokyo Godfathers, a movie touted as an anime Christmas classic, which just happens to star a trans woman. First of all, the plot. We follow a group of three homeless people: alcoholic Gin, motherly trans woman Hana, and teenage runaway Miyuki. Please excuse me if these pronunciations change a little bit throughout the video. They do seem to change a bit between the Japanese and English dub. This found family is living together on the streets of Tokyo during the Christmas season. Christmas Eve is when they find a baby in a trash heap, a baby that they call Kyoko. Throughout the story, the three of them try to find baby Kyoko's real family. This leads them through Tokyo as they find hints towards where and who Kyoko's real family is. Along the way, there's a lot of bantering and high emotions as they all take care of baby Kyoko, meeting a variety of people throughout the action-packed journey through the snow-covered late December Japanese city. The plot just kind of does what it will. It's a bit of a weird, action-filled plot. They are led throughout the streets of Tokyo after finding a key to a storage locker which happens to have photos of who they believe to be baby Kyoko's real parents. There's a lot of happenstance in this plot. They happen to find baby supplies in a graveyard. Miyuki, being kidnapped, brings better care for Kyoko for a short time, and an argument between Gin and Hana happens to lead Gin to finding more clues to the real family of Kyoko. After a lot of false clues and people that aren't actually Kyoko's parents, an action-packed chase leads the trio to a hospital where Kyoko's parents actually are. That's a quick summary, but I'll dive into the story a little bit more as I explore my own thoughts on this story. Here are my thoughts. First off, let's address the elephant in the room. I don't speak Japanese. My knowledge of the language is extremely limited. To the best of my ability, I'll be using my knowledge of Japanese alongside resources about the film, which will be listed in the description, in order to talk about Hana and the story in general. So, let's get into it. Hana. The story doesn't shy away from calling Hana a trans woman. Although those specific words aren't used, within the second scene of the story, Hana says, This is established before we even have any names for any of the characters. It is worth noting that Hana does use female pronouns for herself. In Japanese, it is the speaker that genders oneself, not the person who is speaking to you, as we see in English. But what is also immediately established is transphobia, seemingly from her companion, Gin. She takes this, like all the transphobia in the story, in her stride. Well, if you can call in her stride actually ignoring or not acknowledging almost any of the misgendering towards her. She does make a comment towards the person serving soup that she should get 2 servings, as she could be pregnant. This joke is paid off later in the film when that same server sees Hana at the mall with baby Kyoko, saying, Could you call that transphobia? A transphobic joke? Sure, but I think it's one that the trans community can have a bit of a chuckle at, too. In this case, at least. From my understanding, there's a lot of misgendering within the film. Some are jokes about Hana, both at her expense and from her, about her transness. In the subtitles, and from my understanding, the original Japanese audio, Hana is often called Grandpa, or similar male-leaning titles. It looks like the recent 2020 English dub did take care of this overall, however. It even changes bagman or bag uncle to old lady or bag grandma in Miyuki's dialogue towards Hana. It's nice to see that this film can be changed in a more recent dub. You can tell the care put into it. Even behind the scenes, comments or interviews have this care. The only misgendering of Hana that I spotted in the English dub were a few side characters that weren't in the story much anyways. I've also spotted some unsavory language towards Hana, which I'll group in this side character misgendering group, as it were. Hana is a very emotional, religious woman. She's often seen crying at even the mention of sad topics, like the suggestion of Kyoko being sick. She also calls baby Kyoko a gift from God, or essentially blessed by God, a lot. This definitely shows a sort of religious belief by Hana. Also, the very, very first scene of the film is of Hana and Gin at a children's pageant sort of thing. They're singing Silent Night in Japanese, they're at a church, it's obviously a religious service of some kind. So, obviously, it seems that Hana is religious in some way. She takes this a lot more seriously than Gin, who was actually sleeping in the first scene. Yeah. Anyways, Hana's facial expressions are often more cartoony than other characters, which could be seen as a joke about her performing her gender, when in reality everyone performs gender, it's just more accepted if you're cis-passing. I like to take these over-exaggerated facial expressions as Hana's loud personality shining through. She's a very loud and proud woman. She isn't afraid to make herself heard or seen as she is. Her voice is a bit more gruff at times, which is fine. She's an older trans woman, and heck, even older cis women sometimes have gruff voices. The voice actress of Hana in the dub makes a good point in an interview that often trans women go through voice training to make their speaking voice be higher in register, but Hana doesn't really do this a lot. She does have a woman's tone to her voice, but it's not necessarily the same high pitch that trans women, especially these days, train their voices to maintain. Hana often comes up with haikus on the spot, which is a pretty fun little character trait, coming up with ones for baby Kyoko, and also while leaving a friend she calls Mother, who I'll get into later. Hana also has some musical theater knowledge, as she belts out "Climb Every Mountain" from The Sound of Music, even being surprised when her companions don't recognize it. Her singing voice is a bit deep, but it suits her. Maybe a baritone range? I'm not sure. She also has some knowledge of books. In the scene where Hana, Gin, and Miyoki are looking through a garbage pile just before finding baby Kyoko, she is said to be looking for a set of children's literature as a Christmas gift for Miyoki. During this search, Miyoki throws a book at Gin, and when it hits him in the face, Hana exclaims in horror about using a Dostoevsky, that as a weapon. So she, along with the other two main characters, is very fleshed out and three-dimensional. It's nice to see this story isn't just three homeless bums and a baby, as it would be all too easy to take away the nuanced characters to make fun, simple romps through Tokyo at Christmas, the movie. In older literature or plot summaries of Tokyo Godfathers, Hana is often called a drag queen instead of a trans woman. However, those blurbs aren't entirely wrong. Later in the story, after a lot of running around Tokyo in search of Kyoko's parents, on a particularly cold night on the streets, Hana leads Miyuki to a drag bar called Angel's Tower. It's there that Hana reunites with Mother, a drag queen from her past who seemingly runs the Angel's Tower. As the two of them catch up, it's revealed that Hana used to work at Angel's Tower as a drag queen. Instead of her current short brown hair and head covering, Hana would sport a red dress and a blonde wig while singing. Unfortunately, Hana left the Angel's Tower due to an incident with an inflamed client. She got called some rather derogatory names by this client, making her lash out. She left the Angel's Tower after that incident, ashamed, and became homeless soon after, meeting Gin and Miyuki. It's also revealed that Hana used to have a husband who passed away presumably in the 80s. As Mother asks about AIDS, Hana says her husband, Ken, passed away due to slipping on a bar of soap, probably some sort of traumatic head injury. That left her without a family, as she went to live on the streets after the Angel Tower incident. It's unknown whether Hana was out as trans at the time she was with Ken, or if it was just her drag persona that became herself as a trans woman. Not to say that a trans woman can't also be a drag queen. They can. Some are. I'm just making the note that it isn't confirmed or denied or anything how Hana's drag queen persona connects to her being trans. Throughout the film, Hana doesn't shy away from some more masculine roles. Notably, she helps Gin in rolling a car off of the man who is trapped in the snow earlier in the film. This could be seen as Hana being stronger than a literal teenager, as she does this with Gin instead of Miyuki doing this with Gin. Any way we put it, I'm not saying that her showing strength or being slightly masculine in some scenes is a bad thing. Rather, I'm just acknowledging that she has some masculine traits and isn't afraid of them. gender is all imaginary weird crap anyways, so slightly masculine traits in a trans woman, perfectly fine, perfectly good. But I could totally see how people would run with that in bad circles. Bad. Don't do that. Don't do that. Despite some masculine traits, she really enjoys and embraces motherhood. Upon finding baby Kyoko in the dumpster, Hana is immediately very attached to the child. She initially looks down upon the idea of turning the child into police in order to find her real parents. She says that she doesn't want baby Kyoko to be bouncing from home to home in the foster care system. The way she says this makes me wonder if that was a situation that Hana ended up in the past. But none of that is confirmed. Honestly, we don't get a lot about details for Jin or Hana's childhoods. We get a bit of background on their lives as adults and why they ended up on the streets, but not childhood. Overall, Hana does really try to do what she thinks is best for baby Hyoko. At first, that involves trying to find the woman believed to be her mother, Sachiko. Upon finding a woman about to jump off a bridge who seems drawn to Kyoko, she's readily giving the child over, not without a bit of verbal bashing to the woman, but she's happy to learn that baby Kyoko is back with a woman believed to be her mother, and glad to save a woman's life. Upon being told by Gin later on that that woman is not Kyoko's mother, Hana leaps into action, chasing after the woman. But Hana does this by running after her through the streets of Tokyo, then through a cab, which she yells at during the chase, not afraid to raise her voice and make it known that they need to go faster whether it's safe or not. Her eye is only on making sure that baby Kyoko is safe in the arms of her parents. She follows Miyuki up various flights of stairs to the roof of a building, and upon seeing baby Hyoko tumbling over the roof, dives after her immediately. Hana's own safety be damned. I wish I could say it was an "of course they'll be okay" kind of leap, but the movie isn't afraid to show some intense falling, sliding on snow, and the grip to a loose banner on the way down in a way that keeps the action going after the will they won't they of the other fake mom woman trying to take a long walk off a short roof ledge. Hana is so determined to keep baby Kyoko safe. It's amazing and admirable, truly a motherly figure within this movie. Now, for the majority of this story, I was really hoping that the title of this movie, Tokyo Godfathers, was just a really weird translation thing or something. However, looking at the end of the movie, it's said that the real parents of the baby, the ones that we only meet for a few minutes at most at the end, would like to make Hana and Gin the baby's godfathers. So, yeah. No such luck when it comes to the title. They also both end up in the men's ward of the hospital, unlike the previous doctor, which, as far as I could tell, doesn't misgender Hana. We see that being in the men's ward upsets Hana, but we get no indication as to her reaction at the request to be the baby's godfather. Instead, we cut away after Miyuki and her father see one another and are reunited in the hospital room. While I understand that the story is going for transphobic realism on the part of the hospital, it's really frustrating to me that not only is Hana stuck in the wrong ward at the end of the story, but she's misgendered by Kyoko's real parents as a godfather. Godparent was right there. Right there. Gender-neutral titles exist if you didn't want to correctly gender Hana. Just saying. Again, at least for the Japanese audio, this could be me overlooking the original Japanese in the film due to my poor Japanese skills. I'm not sure how neutral Japanese gets when it comes to terms like godfather versus godparent. It also could be framed as a genuine way that the parents are seeing Hana not as herself, but in a transphobic light, whether intentionally or not on the part of the characters or characterization. However, this is the main title of the film in both Japanese and English, to my understanding, so it is obviously something of relevance and importance. But after that disappointing ending with Hana, let's dive into the story of Gin. This is the character we see with Hana the most. Although Hana is generally gendered correctly throughout the film, there are some things that Gin says that are not that great. Obviously, in the first films of the movie, he says that real women get pregnant. Honestly, this isn't just transphobic, but it is also a comment that affects cis women. There are many cis women who are unable to get pregnant for one reason or another, so rhetoric like this is affecting more than just the intended trans folks. In the subtitled version of the film, there's also a brief scene where, when initially taking care of baby Kyoko, he seemingly misgenders Hana through referring to her with he/him pronouns. Obviously, this didn't happen in the dubbed version of the film, and is a bit strange as, again, pronouns are more of a self-referential thing rather than language towards you that other people use. I'm not sure if this is just a translation thing on part of the subtitles or something that the actual Japanese audio uses. But getting away from the trans stuff, Kin is the man who, though he tries to stay with and protect his companions, he still is a bit of a lone wolf in the story. He, on multiple occasions, seems to just run away from Hana and Miyuki. He finds a fellow homeless man who he speaks to and tries to take care of, especially when that man compares himself to Gin. After getting beat up at the end of the old fellow homeless man storyline, Gin finds himself at Angel's Towers. This is where he reunites with Hana, Miyuki, and Kyoko. He finds his own blood and bone daughter at the hospital when Hana collapses from overwhelm in the middle of the film, which is quite a surprise, as he previously claimed that his whole family was dead from illness. Honestly, his whole backstory falls apart when meeting up with his daughter in the hospital. Gin had also claimed that he was a racer at horse tracks, but was kicked out and became homeless around the same time that his family died. I think that's what he says. It's a little bit muddled, at least in my brain. His daughter brings up the truth that he was just a gambler that lost a lot of money and, after getting into extensive debt, went to live on the streets, abandoning his wife and daughter. Strangely, despite being told that the person he was indebted to was attacked, he was relieved to learn that they didn't pass away and were okay. To me, this shows that Gin is more concerned with life in general rather than fixing his life. If his debtor had passed, there could have been an out for him to clear his debt, but there's no such luck. And Gin seemingly is accepting and okay with that. At the end of the story, he doesn't extensively question the fact that his companions are chasing after the false mother of Kyoko. Instead, he takes the facts and immediately joins them in trying to rescue the baby that he spent the film helping to nurture. He lets them know that, oh hey, you have the wrong person, due to some information that he receives on his own little solo adventure. He steals a bicycle to try and chase after the fake mother who has stolen the transportation truck in her attempt to escape with the baby that isn't hers. And this is why Hana was chasing after the mother in a cab, because a transportation truck was stolen in the chaos and everybody found their own way of chasing after the transportation truck before it crashed. And she led them up flights of stairs to the roof. Anyways, Gin surprisingly is able to catch up with the truck, even on a bicycle, eventually causing a crash. He seemingly springs up without issue and joins Hana in running up numerous flights of stairs to rescue the baby. When both the fake mother and Hana, in attempts to rescue baby Kyoko, jump off the roof of the building, he dives after them to stop them from falling off the roof. Eventually, he tries to do this with Hana, who also leaps off the roof in an attempt to save baby Kyoko, but it doesn't work. Hana continues to fall off the roof. As we discussed earlier, she is safe in her journey from roof to ground through a lot of really well-placed roof tiles and flags. Anyways, overall, I can understand that the people behind the film are not looking to portray Gin as a very sympathetic character. Heck, I don't particularly like him, especially after the whole of the story. He seems like a pretty selfish drunk man, despite vowing throughout the story to look after baby Kyoko. He initially does want to do the right thing in turning baby Kyoko over to the police authorities instead of finding the baby's parents themselves. Honestly, this just makes a whole lot of sense. It's really just through Hana's love for the baby and her stubbornness in wanting to take care of baby Kyoko herself that the plot continues, and the story isn't just they turn the baby into the police and the story ends. Gin, despite vocally disapproving of keeping the baby Kyoko and trying to find her family by themselves, still stays with the group to assist. Overall, it's obvious that he cares for their family too. He's even seen caring for his blood family members. Even though he initially tried to pass them off as dead, it seems that he cares for every family unit that he is part of. Despite his flaws, which the movie doesn't seem to mince words about, calling him an alcoholic and a gambler, and an old man, he is very determined and caring. And then, let's move on to Miyuki. Miyuki is a character that is what I'll call the young legs of the group. AKA, she's the one that is often going out to run errands in the cold over the course of the story. She's the one who goes to get the water to provide for the baby at the beginning of the story. She's also the one that is the most in charge of food. She has some spunk as a character. She often calls Hana old lady, or in the original, something like bag grandpa, among other inflammatory statements or nicknames. So again, she's also kinda in on the transphobia, kinda is, kinda not, kinda in that weird spot. It's established in the story quite quickly that she does technically have a family to go back to, but she doesn't really want to. She seems very connected to Hana, Gin, and even baby Kyoko. Throughout the story, she is seen avoiding her birth family, especially her father. She sees her father a few times throughout the story, but ignores his calls to her. It is revealed that her father is a cop, but that her relationship with those parents is a bit rocky. In a sort of weird dream sequence, she is seen having stabbed her father after a disagreement about her kitten Angel, I believe. Then she presumably runs away from home to live on the streets after that happens. I'm not entirely sure how legitimate this is, or whether this is just a weird dream sequence, as her mother and father in that sequence turn into Gin and Hana. Throughout the story, she tags along with Gin and Hana in the journey to find baby Kyoko's real parents. This eventually leads to Miyuki getting kidnapped with baby Kyoko when they end up at a fancy wedding. She finds herself with the kidnapper, who speaks Spanish, which she can't understand, and even in both the dub and subtitled versions, basically none of the Spanish is translated. And so, if I am incorrect in my assumption that it is Spanish, I apologize. But to the best of my knowledge, it sounds like Spanish. Anyways, it's not understandable to characters, and that's what counts. The kidnapper leads her to a woman that is presumably his wife. The woman, despite speaking, again, Spanish, I think, tries to communicate with Miyuki and takes care of baby Kyoko while bonding with Miyuki through Miyuki's photos that are shown. Honestly, I found this part of the film a bit hard to follow. On my first watch, I thought Miyuki was talking about photos that her kidnapper had provided or something. This whole sequence was just a bit weird. I understand that all three of the main characters were to go off on their own sort of adventure, but this was definitely a strange sequence. Miyuki is just a 15-year-old kid, but she's protective of her found family and still has a soft spot for the family that she ran away from, too. She's feisty, but sticks up for those she cares about. The trio as a whole. This main trio is apart from one another almost as much as they stick together within the almost 90-minute runtime of the film, so we get to explore a lot of little scenes of Gin, Miyuki, and Hana on the streets. This is everything from hopping from place to place in order to find a place to sleep, to being kicked out of a business due to another customer being uncomfortable with their presence, or even in the case of Gin, at least, being beat up for just existing as a homeless person. This film doesn't seem to back away from the terrible parts of being a homeless individual, from struggling to find food and a place to sleep, to being spoken of poorly due to not having a place to shower, and even being beat up by others who view the homeless as lesser. That being said, it's obvious that throughout this hardship, and despite numerous arguments with one another, they all get along as a chosen family. Heck, the plot starts off with Hana trying to provide a good Christmas for Miyuki, a warm meal and a Christmas present. The homeless trio are strong and supportive of one another and one another's choices. And that is really nice to see. Now, we've rounded off the characters about as much as I want to chat about them, so let's chat about random stuff I couldn't find a better place for. Okay, there's some moments that aren't character related that I wanted to talk about too. First of all, I want to talk about how Tokyo Godfathers does its opening credits. I doubt this was the movie that did it first, or arguably even the movie that did it best, but I loved the way that all the opening credits were part of signs or other text in the background of the film instead of the regular white text on the bottom half of the screen. The film takes the signs and vehicles in the background and uses that to show viewers the team behind Tokyo Godfathers. I think that's really super creative and fun. There is some language in the film, like Hana calling herself a homo or an old queer, that honestly, strangely made me smile. It's a way that I've heard queer folks refer to themselves in the real world. Some could find it, especially the word queer, kind of offensive. I get that. Most of the uses of this term, however, seemed to be from Hana when referring to herself, which I'd say is a pretty proper way to do it and proper way to use it. I understand that this wasn't exactly a queer team behind the scenes of Tokyo Godfathers, instead often touted to be from two cis men. It's a bit disappointing, but I'm hoping that those two men were in contact with the queer community in some way during the making of this film. I don't know, though. Obviously, I can't speak to the queer community that is present within Japan, either today nor in the 90s or early 2000s when this film was presumably being made, so all of the stuff that I'm speaking of is my view as a Canadian queer person in our current time of 2024 as this video is being made. So could a lot of the old, now offensive ways of a reference being thrown towards our trans main character be accurate for the time? Perhaps. But this just makes me all the more happy that the 2020 dub of Tokyo Godfathers tried to clean up the script a bit with better language that reflects the general beliefs and views towards trans folks in the 2020s, despite when the film is set. The film in general isn't particularly mean or harsh on Hana, as I had originally prepared myself for when first watching the film. Given the name of the film, I expected a lot of transphobic references to Hana not being her true self. I expected basically constant transphobia and a very bad portrayal of Hana as a trans woman and a queer person. This wasn't what we got overall. There are sprinklings of transphobia throughout the story, but there are also a lot of affirming things that there's just a lot of nuance to this character and her role within the story. Oh, and because this is the random things that I don't have other places to mention, I also want to say that we never find out why the baby was abandoned on Christmas. We really don't get to speak with or about the real parents of baby Kyoko when the end of the film rolls around. It's just really a quick thing of, yep, these are the parents, and they want to thank our main trio in a special way that totally isn't transphobic or alluding to the title of the film. I really wish there was even one more scene with the main characters meeting their real parents, as I think that would really end things off nicely. As it is, we end on a sort of unsatisfactory note where we meet Miyoki's father as he reunites with his daughter, but they barely speak to one another before the credits roll. Overall, it's not a very satisfactory ending. I'm not sure why this ending was chosen, to be honest. But let's move on to final thoughts. Overall, I can see why this film is a classic. It's one of the few anime films set at Christmas. It's also an earlier film with a main character who is trans, especially in Japan. Tokyo Godfathers is also one of the rare stories with a trans main character that isn't about the characters coming out or transition into their real gender. It shows off great 2D animation and is a wonderful story with characters that are well-rounded despite the relatively short runtime of the film. The way these characters interact with one another is wonderful. Explicit queerness in anime is something that is being seen more and more, which is so nice. I'm so glad that overall the character of Hana was treated and written well, especially for the time. I'd love to see more depictions of transgender or non-binary characters like this in anime, so leave your suggestions for that in the comments below. If you have any other subjects about mental health or LGBTQIA+ topics, please let me know down in the comments. As always, my resources are in the description. Thanks for watching the OCD MB. Stay safe out there.